So today, I'm going to be taking you through 8 things that I think you should know before you buy the Oculus Quest. Welcome back to another episode of STU'S Reviews. Now normally I do a full review before I post any content like this. However, I've been going through a discovery process with this, learning about it, learning how it works, the best practices, the best apps, that sort of stuff over the past couple of weeks. And there's a couple of things that I wish I'd known before I bought it, and I want to share those with you now. So, before we jump in, hit that like and subscribe and that notification bell if you can, because that will notify you when my full review of the Oculus Quest comes out in a week or so's time. But other than that, let's dive into the first thing: virtual reality sickness. Now, this is a huge thing, and this isn't something that many people really discuss in reviews, but I think being the Quest, this is going to be people's entry device into VR. Most people out there will have the Quest as their first virtual reality headset. And this isn't something people generally talk about very much, but virtual reality sickness is a thing, and it is horrible. It is the most acute motion sickness I've ever had in my life. So much so that I had to have a lie down once I'd played for a bit. Now, this isn't apparent in all games. Things like Super Hot, where you're just standing still, and things like Pistol Whip, where the things are moving towards you, you don't really get that motion sickness. That only happens when you're moving around with the thumbsticks on the controllers, because you're getting this sensation that you're moving through your brain, but then actually you're not moving, so your inner ear is combating it. Now, there's a fantastic video out there by Virtual Reality Oasis about how to combat virtual reality sickness, and he gives such tips as like drinking ginger ale, taking a lie down, and other things like that, all of which I found really helped me kind of get used to moving around in virtual reality. One thing that really did help me, however, was one particular game which is completely free in the App Store on the Oculus Quest, and that's called Rec Room. Now, the reason this really helped me is it kind of offered me a tiered or stepped approach to getting used to moving around in virtual reality. Scientists have a theory that moving around in virtual reality is better if there is a fixed point. So the first tier that this sort of does in Rec Room is it allows you to look at the game through a window. Now, you can still move your head around and see exactly, what you're looking at in a virtual reality environment, but you're looking at it as if it's a TV screen floating in front of you. Now, this, you don't feel any motion sickness at all. It's like playing GoldenEye whilst you're looking at your TV on the other side of the room. It's that same sort of experience. Now, when you've gotten used to this, you can then turn the 3D settings on, and what that does is it creates a circle in your vision. So your peripherals are still dark, so it's almost like you're watching a TV experience, but things are now in 3D, so they're wrapping around you a bit more. So it gives you that ability to step into it a little bit more. And then when you're ready to turn that off, you can do, but you can keep it on whilst you're moving and while you're running, or you can keep it on during certain exercises. And then again, when you're ready, you can turn it all off, so you're in full 3D and you're in full virtual reality. I would say now, after about 2 weeks, I'm starting to get used to it, and Rec Room definitely helps. So download that. That's going to be the first app you download, especially if you suffer from virtual reality sickness. The second thing you should know is that you can't use it in the dark. Properly anyway. So this has what's called 6 degrees of freedom. It can track your head movements and it can track your movements within a room. So it gives you a lot of movement ability within apps. However, when it's too dark, the cameras and the sensors can't pick up your movement within the room. They can only pick up your head movement. So it goes from 6 degrees of freedom to 3 degrees of freedom if you're using it in the dark. And that can be a little bit limiting on certain apps and certain games where moving around in the room is more beneficial to yourself. Now, along with not being able to use it in the dark, the third thing is you can't use it outside. This was a bit of a bummer, because when I got this, I thought to myself, great, I can use it outside where there's more room, because I'm 6'8", and I'll get onto that in a few minutes. But you can't actually use it outside for a number of different reasons. First of all, the sensors on here and the lens itself far too sensitive to use in the sunlight, so don't take it outdoors because you could damage your headset. But the second thing as well is that if you're in a uniform area such as a big open field, it can't really track your movement, very much like it can't in the dark, because everything is uniform. It doesn't quite understand moving around on concrete, for example. So if you're buying this and hopefully planning on using it outside, you're going to have to scrap that idea and find somewhere inside to use it. Now, it's not impossible to use it outside. I've seen people do things like put certain markers on the ground to do it, making sure that they're in the shade. It is possible, but it's not recommended, and that's something you're going to need to consider. Now, the fourth thing is going back to what I was saying about me being 6'8". You're going to need a lot of space with this. Because it's untethered, because it doesn't require a computer to work, you can move around a hell of a lot. Now, this isn't that much of an issue for most people, but being 6'8", the environment is extremely limiting, because if I lunge forward, for example, to punch someone, I lunge forward about 2 meters, whereas a normal person might only punch half a meter or a meter. My lunge is a lot more. And also as well, if I'm going to throw something or catch something in the air, I constantly hit the ceiling. Ow! And that has actually given me a couple of cuts and bruises on my hand over the past couple of weeks. So space is a premium, and I would advise that, look, you need a lot of space to use this if you're going to get the most out of it. There are some safety settings in it which are quite cool. You've got something called a guardian boundary, and what that does is it allows you to draw a boundary on the floor where you're allowed to move, and if you go through that boundary or go near it, you start to see lines appear on the screen, almost like a jail cell. It kind of works like this. If I move my hand close to the camera, when I get outside of the boundary or near the boundary, lines appear in the air in front of me to let me know that I can't move any further. Now, that's okay, but if you're lunging quickly, you might not necessarily have time to react and end up putting your fist through a TV, going straight through that guardian boundary. Just remember, you're gonna need space. Some games, not so much, like Beat Saber, you stood still, but something like Super Hot, where you are moving and dodging, and even things like Pistol Whip, where you've got to lean from side to side, you are moving quite a lot more. So have some space. Move the furniture in your living room if you can, so that you have got a bit of space. And also, one massive tip is, if you are tall like me, take the lampshade up, because honest to God, I must have hit the lampshade 100 times before I decided to do anything about it. That is a top tip for you. Now, the fifth thing I wish I'd known beforehand is that if you have a 3D printer, you can make some incredible little attachments for this. The first thing I've printed is over there. It's a little mount I can mount my headset to and charge it whilst it's not in use. But there's other things as well, such as this, which is a little mount I've printed for a battery to fit on the top. That is a really neat little thing, because it allows me to carry on using the device and charge it at the same time whilst being unhindered by loads and loads of cables. If you're getting one of these, try and get yourself a little battery mount for it, or 3D print one if you've got it, because you will thank me later. The battery life doesn't last that long without it, so batteries are a must. I've also printed things like little cable clips as well that can hold cables when connecting to a computer, which I'll go into very shortly. But there's all sorts of stuff you can do as well. Things like for the controllers, you can 3D print Beat Saber handles, gun attachments for them. If you have a 3D printer, you're going to find that you can do a hell of a lot with this. At number 6, connecting this to your computer makes it act like a full PCVR headset, which means you can access all of the VR games in Steam as long as your computer can run it. Now, I'm currently using a Mac and using Boot Camp to install the software for this, and it runs okay. I did find it ran a little bit laggy, but I changed the resolution in the Oculus debug tool, and that made things run a little bit smoother at a bit of sacrifice to quality. So it's not the most ideal scenario, but it worked absolutely fine. And best of all, it gives me access to some fantastic games that just aren't available for the Quest at the moment. Things like Blade and Sorcery. Yeah, Karen, come and get my toilet paper. Come on. Here. Is there no one else? Oh, there is someone else. You can have that. Come here. It's okay. Shh, 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 shh. Just combing your hair. Look, your hair is out of shape. Look, those are some very neat buns there. Look at that. Is that a bun or is it more like a ponytail? Just going to comb your hair. Shh, 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 shh. Welcome to Psychopath Simulator. You can have a back. Your hair was bad and all. I know you're still alive. I mean, ultimately, that is one of my favourite games. It's just so good. It's so funny. And if you have the ability to run VR games on your computer, whether that's a Mac through Boot Camp or whether that's a Windows computer, download Oculus Link and connect this up. Now, to do this, you're going to need an Oculus Link cable. Now, Oculus sell one called the Oculus Link cable, and that is quite expensive, but you can also get third-party ones as well by a company called PartyLink. Again, I'll leave a link in the description below where you can find those. Anker do one too. Anker was the one that I'm using myself, but that's only 3 meters. It's quite small. I have ordered one that's 8 meters from China. Whether or not I ever see that, I don't know. I will get back to you on that very, very soon. But having a bigger cable obviously allows you better movement. That is the only downside to the PCVR stuff, is that you have to have it wired up. Now, there is a way to get it wireless, and that comes with tip number 7. There is a secret app store for the Quest. Now, this secret app store is called SIDEQUEST. It basically allows you to sideload apps that haven't been developed and put into the Oculus Quest store. Obviously do this at your own risk, but it does allow you to install some really good stuff such as Pavlov, VR and other apps that aren't available yet in the Quest store. So that is a really good thing. But it also allows you to install a patch for something called Virtual Desktop. Now, the Virtual Desktop basically streams your desktop from your computer to the headset. And with the patch in SideQuest, it allows you to wirelessly stream VR games. So you can be completely wireless. It works absolutely fine, to be honest. So if you want wireless PCVR, then using SideQuest is a really good way to do that. And again, I'll leave a link to the SideQuest software in the description below. I'm not going to explain exactly how to do it because it's a little bit complicated, but I'm sure there's plenty of videos out there that explain it more. But as long as you're aware, tip number 7 is that you can install apps that aren't necessarily from the Oculus Quest App Store. Lastly, tip number 8, and this is something that I personally believe myself, is that you don't need to buy the 128 gig model. There's 2 sizes of this, 64 and 128. I found the 64 more than enough because most apps are actually quite small. The only reason you'd want to go for 128 gig is if you were, say, installing or downloading loads and loads of films, but you can use this as a streaming device. You can install Netflix on it or Amazon Prime. You've got YouTube on it, and if you have something like Plex media server, then you can stream directly to it from that as well. So really, you don't need the massive 128 gig model because most of the apps are sort of mobile formatted. They're very, very small, and you can fit a hell of a lot on here before you have to start deleting stuff. And as well, if you're using PCVR, you don't have to install anything on here because it's all running through the computer. And that concludes my 8 tips before you buy the Oculus Quest. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that I've missed. So if you have any other tips or things that you think people should know before buying the Oculus Quest, let us know in the comments below. But other than that, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, because that'll let you know when my full review of the Oculus Quest comes out later this week or early next week. But other than that, a massive thanks to all my current patrons. You guys are incredible, and I couldn't do this without you. Like I say every episode, I mean it. And I'll see you back for another episode of STU'S Reviews soon. Naughty! Naughty!